Hi everyone, Simon here with a review of Hotshot Racing. Hotshot Racing is available for PS4 as you see on your screens because that's where I bought it, but also PC, Xbox One and Nintendo Switch, and it is a beautiful love letter throwback to 90s nostalgia and arcade racers. You can play 1 to 4 players locally but take 4 to 8 online. The game really evokes the time, and some of you might be too young for this, I feel old. In the early 90s, when these types of games like your Daytona 500, your Indy 500s, your Crazy Taxis I guess came a little bit later, and your Sega Rallies, they evoked a time where big bold polygons were a thing, speed was of the essence, a huge thumping soundtrack was key to going to the arcade experience, because an arcade was able to provide something for you that you couldn't get from console or PC at home at that time. Arcades had the advantage and the atmosphere and the glitz and glamour. It's not like that these days, so maybe from the nostalgia angle, this one's going to really appeal to my age group and older, slightly more to people below the age of, I'd probably say 30, where arcades were less of a thing, unless you was Dance Dance Revolution. Outside of that though, what Hotshot Racing does is transfer that aesthetic and that feel and that sound beautifully into a game that you can now play at home. So the big bold brash polygons, the sense of speed as you hurtle down a track at like 150 miles per hour, it really feels and breathes like pure life through the screen at you. And that sense of speed and direction change and the way how the car just grips like every tyre is clinging to earth beautifully gives that purest arcade feel where you feel untouchable, and Hotshot Racing absolutely nails all of that. When you handle the cars, yes they do swing out wide and yes you can drift around corners, but they don't feel overly clunky. It takes a little while to get used to the driving model, because you do have to brake, you do have to drift, and you do have to turn, so it's not like a full-on like bounce off the walls arcade style. And you do, as your car, have health. So if you do smash into other cars or smash into barriers, you can explode and that'll be game over as well. Again, a good carryover from the arcade modes of games previous. All of that works absolutely beautifully. The soundtrack as well is an absolute sensation and I absolutely love it. It evokes that 90s feel and is available to buy separately, and I believe actually you can get it for free if you buy the game within the first couple of weeks on Steam. So if that offer's still up there and you like a good like arcade 90s classic soundtrack, now's the time to grab the game. There's several different modes that you can play across Hotshot Racing. So you've got your normal time trial and Grand Prix modes, and Grand Prix takes 4 different tracks and then you kind of have a mini championship through it with one of the 8 characters that you can choose from. There's also then 2 additional fun modes. Cops and Robbers sees the grid of 8 players divided up into Cops and Robbers. Robbers need to drift and speed and slipstream and collect points, which translates into cash. And as you go through checkpoints, you bank that cash. If you can survive all the way to the end, the one with the most cash is then confirmed as the top robber. However, there'll also be a couple of you that start off as cops. As the cops go round, they can smash the other people off the track and stop them collecting their money. So it becomes a little bit of a chase and smash style of game. It's quite fun to play, it's a nice and simple distraction, and some people can be proper tactical when they're trying to deal with stuff like that. The other mode is Drive or Explode, which I found equal parts fun and frustrating. Essentially, as you drive through, think of the movie Speed. When the bus drops below 50, the bus will explode. This is very much the same type of thing, but there's a minimum speed that as you go through checkpoints continuously increases, and if you stay below that, the health of your car starts to deteriorate at quicker and quicker rates. Add on to that the fact that whenever you touch a barrier or another car, you'll also lose health, and very quickly your car will be on fire and going forward into a bawling, spewing explosion of flames quite quickly. The reason why that's good fun is because you're constantly finding new ways to get round the track without losing speed, and then chaining up your drifts into boosts, because it is all about this game drifting and boosting to keep that speed up high. And chaining it all together really helps. However, you can also then be made in this mode specifically, but also in races as well, a little bit frustrated because the AI in particular don't half love a bit of contact sport. They're really aggressive. And so they will think nothing about smashing you up against a barrier and leaving you for dead. Especially in driver explode mode, but also on the races too. That then brings me on to the AI, which is going to be exceptionally Marmite for people. The rubber banding in this game is, wow! I tell you what, it's wider than my waistline, and I've been chonky all the way through lockdown, more chonky than normal. If you go fast and you're in first place all the way through, the cars will hound you and dive through and get miraculous extra speed from absolutely out of nowhere, regardless of what difficulty level you're on. The same then applies if you slow down to a crawl, so do the AI, and so it feels almost like you can just muck about for the first 2 laps and then just go, right, driving the last few corners now, and basically try and leapfrog a lot of the AI, unless you're playing in the expert mode where they don't seem to really care and they just go round at full speed. I found the rubber banding to be frustrating and a bit of a detriment to the single player experience. Not only that, but it does, if you're playing in multiplayer, fill up the rest of the cars with AI competitors, because there's always then 8 cars driving. So you have to deal with this quite a lot, and if you've got a big field spread of people playing in multiplayer, then the AI kind of split off, and like some of them will be right at the back, a couple of them will be right at the front, and it all becomes a bit higgledy-piggledy. And I wasn't necessarily a particular fan of that. Outside of that as well, the other thing that kind of led me to a minor disappointment was the selection of tracks. There's 16 in total, which initially sounds great, but they're all in 4 locations, and quite often the locations are just more like alternative layouts to the same kind of outlay of track. So it didn't feel like all of the tracks were significantly different enough from each other to make it feel like there were 16. In all honesty, I thought there was more like 8 or 9. So I feel like because Sumo have said that they're going to be adding new tracks, new mods, new game modes to the game as free updates later on down the line, if they're going to look at free new tracks, they need to develop a new area so that those tracks feel significantly different, don't add to what's already there. I know sometimes it's just going to be a reskin and a retheme, but in a game that lives so heavily on its aesthetic, it needs the tracks to look and feel different, because then you get immersed in that arcade experience. And it was one of the very few downsides that I found to Hotshot Racing. The next minor downside is around the characters and the customization. The 8 characters all feel quite cookie cutter, and although they do have like their own Grand Prix story mode finishing like mini cutscene, which I thought was quite cute and reminded me of when you completed fighting games to get the FMV end sequences in games like Tekken. They don't really have much character. They do all have different cars though, and unlockable liveries as you go through and complete various challenges. And those challenges will be like win 3 races with this character, drift continuously for 10 seconds in this car, all of those kind of things. And what they'll do, those challenges, is unlock things in that specific character's garage. The garage isn't specific for the garage is specific to the character. It's not for everyone. So if you drive like constantly with, say, Mike or Alexa, then you'll unlock only things for those characters. So you'll need to do the same challenges again for Toshiro or Marcus, so that you can then unlock their versions of the same thing, which I think adds some replayability. I think it could also be a bit grindy. But the key thing here was that all of the customizations that you unlock, and there's quite a lot actually, and I was quite impressed, are all aesthetic only. they don't change the makeup of the car at all. So what you start off with is that each character kind of has like a speed car, a drift car, a cornering car, and a boosty style car. And whilst you can change the aesthetic of how they look, fundamentally they are stuck in those kind of pigeonholed zones. And I felt like that was a tiny bit of a step back and a tiny bit of disappointment. And the reason why I say that is because Sumo Digital were responsible for one of my favourite, if not my favourite, kart racer game of all time, which was Sonic and Sega All-Stars Transformed. And with that series, you was able to start to kind of put mods in where you could slightly nuance to the edge of different versions of a boost, a drift, a speed, and a cornering car, and that's absent here. The last thing that I'm going to kind of go about is its really bizarre online requirement. Now, I'll kind of clarify this. When you go online to race, it will only kick off a race if 4 or more of you are in the lobby together. So, and it doesn't matter what type of race that you're trying to put together, because initially when I got into an online lobby, I was put in a cops and robbers one, and I thought, well, 4 players is fair enough, because then you've got enough cops and enough robbers to kind of make it worth your while. But it will still fill out the rest of the 8 playable cars in AI drivers anyway. But when you then go into online races, I was still kicking around for a good 10-15 minutes before we could ever get a lobby full of 4 people together to begin with. And I just feel like that's a little bit short-sighted for what is going to be an indie game that is not going to have the biggest player base online at the best of times anyway. I was struggling to get more than 4 people in a lobby at one time all the way through launch weekend. And to be honest, although I did get some going on the Sunday, it was only 3 or 4 matches and then someone left and we were stuck with 3 people and we was all like pressing on and off on the start button going, which seemed a bit of a weird one for me. Outside of that, we did have a couple of issues with the online multiplayer where we just get stuck in a lobby and we'd have to come back out and go back in again. But outside of that, the game ran smoothly, didn't run into any crashes or any issues around frame rates or anything like that. And the game is an absolute joy to play in single player experience and with local multiplayer as well. I just wished that there was a little bit more variety on the actual tracks and the way how they look, but also to kind of turn on or off some of that rubber banding so that it doesn't feel quite so cheaty and so frustrating that you drive a perfect race and then get absolutely blasted with 2 corners to go, or you drive a complete and utter numpty race and then drive properly for the last 2 corners and win. So with that all kind of said and done, I hope that you found this review informative and enjoyable. There will be a written review over on higherplayinggames.com at the weekendish. Until then, you guys take care, and I'll catch you again doing another lap here on Higher Playing Games. Bye for now. Higher Plane Games is part of the Higher Plane Network, a collection of media projects ran by me. If you like what you see and want to find out more, visit patreon.com/Higher Plane Network. Your support can make so much more possible, be that a like, a comment, a share, or a pledge. Thanks for watching.